Here we go. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Ricky's Rockin' Reviews. I have the privilege of being joined by the great Jacy Morris. He is the author of The Taxidermied Man and many other books, such as Killing the Cult and many, many others. But we're going to be talking about The Taxidermied Man mostly today. So without further ado, let me give the floor to the great Jacy Morris.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm glad you read my book and want to talk about it. Fantastic.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. So the first thing I wanted to ask you was, can you describe like how you conceived of this idea for this story? And I guess
Well,
I should say, I'm sorry, and I guess I should say if you can kind of give a brief synopsis for anyone who isn't aware or who hasn't watched my review.
sure. Yeah, so the Taxidermied Man is about a guy who has dementia is growing on him because he's been drinking and he's got alcohol related dementia, and so he decides that he's going to kind of take his own life, and he feels really bad about it. So he goes to a taxidermist and has his body stuffed so that he could still be around with his wife. From there, it kind of turns into a real shit show of weirdness. And
Yeah.
it just kind of gets bigger and bigger as the story goes, right?
And
So, oh, go ahead.
no, I'll say, yeah, it definitely gets big. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun story. It just kind of exponentially grows in its scope, which I found fascinating to write. Um, the the genesis of that story was a long time ago. I had actually thought that up when I was in college, so perhaps 20 years ago.
Mhm.
I had written a version of it for a creative writing class I was having, and I showed it to my wife, and she was not impressed by it because, as the taxidermied man gets stuffed, he makes sure that he has, he's fully operational, right? Um, my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, was not very impressed with that part of it, and she's just like, "Oh, what a pervert!" And I was so it was a very immature telling, and if I had tried to publish it when I was in college, it just never would have gotten picked up. It didn't have the depth and the gravitas that I was able to put into it as an older person who's a little more experienced, a little wiser, and kind of understands the true horror of that situation.
Yeah.
As far as the genesis of it, I mean, we always sit around thinking about, well, what's going to happen after we die, right? Like cremation, burial, those are your two options, right? How about stuffing yourself? Seems like it should be an option, right? It's a creepy option. I wouldn't take it. I don't know if you would take that, but
Oh.
I like to give people options.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a completely fresh idea. I was like when I heard about it, I think I saw the cover. I was kind of just scrolling through Goodreads and I was like, "Oh man, this is something I got to try out." And I kind of want to I want to get more into the scope of it because without spoiling anything, the story it starts very personal and very intense, really gripping first chapter, and then by the end of the story, we've gone through so many things, so many huge concepts. So when you were initially writing it, did you anticipate that it was going to go in that direction, or is that something that just kind of evolved naturally as you were writing?
When I initially wrote it, I wanted to take it places that were challenging. I wanted to take it to places that make people think. That's one of the goals for myself as a writer. I don't just write things just to entertain. I also got to be saying something. That's one of the goals that I have as a writer. And so when I wrote it, I knew I was going to be saying some things, and I also knew that it was kind of a challenging concept, and that you have a static figure that can't go anywhere, right? So you have to think up ways to move that through, or else you don't have much of a story. I could have written that story in, 10 pages tops, right? And it wouldn't have gone anywhere. So I had to have events that moved it on. And the the jumps in time I thought were necessary, and I thought they were also key to the character and their kind of, their purgatory that they're kind of stuck in.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm curious, how long did it take you to write the story? Like, how long was it festering in your mind, and then how long did it take to actually write?
So the initial concept I wrote in when I was like 22, and that was about over 20 years ago. This concept I wrote in about 10 days, and that's editing and revising and everything.
Wow.
And then I sent it out to a publisher, and they snapped it up. So not very long at all. It's literally, let's see, 10 days. That's probably about 20 hours worth of work on it. So
Oh, wow. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I,
mean,
I write pretty fast.
yeah, yeah. I follow you on Instagram, and then you're talking about your word counts, how you're achieving and hitting these goals almost daily. It's really cool to see. Do you how much time of the day do you dedicate to writing?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to where I've built kind of a following, and I have fans, and they're awesome and they're supportive, and they buy my stuff, which allows me to go half time as a teacher. So I'm a language arts teacher. So I devote about 1 to 4 every day to writing, and that could be anywhere from 2,000 words, which I always try and make sure I get 2,000 to 4,000 words if I'm having a good day. So that's how it goes. And any extra time I get, I work around with like marketing and covers and communications and emails and stuff like this.
Wow, that's very cool. I look up to you in that regard because I do want to get into writing myself. I have all these ideas that are festering, and I have some drafts of some things, preliminary stuff. But yeah, I'd like to have the confidence to be able to get on that level one day. So this is really good stuff. Um, so in Bud's afterlife, when you were conceiving of these ideas, was there like a set of rules that you were establishing to help you kind of keep the story focused, and like for example, the things that he can experience and the way that he cannot interact with anyone that's alive, and the stuff that goes on in his own mind? Was that something that you had to think of separately from the narrative, or was that something that was kind of developed along with the narrative?
It developed with the concept as I started writing it. I'm kind of what they call a pantser, where I just sit down and I'll just write something. So I don't really plan things.
Yeah.
So initially, I was like, how am I going to keep this guy interesting? He's stuck here, and that's where the horror elements come in. Is the fact that he is alone and stuck with his decision for like eternity, right?
Hmm.
So the rules came by with the idea of how horrific would this be to be stuck in here. And so I just kind of limited him to his physical body, and not being able to really do anything outside of it except observe. And then I had to kind of say, well, this is not interesting unless he's a human being still trapped here, still having feelings, still remembering, the horrors of his life and all these things that went on. Like that was key to the story. If I took that part out of it, I don't really have a story. I just have this cool thing that happened to a person, which wouldn't be so bad. But it's the trauma and the thoughts of his own decisions and his own mistakes that I think makes the story work. The stuff around him is interesting. It's cool. It's kind of fun to think about. It's challenging. It's trying to get you to think. But it comes down to him and trying to humanize him, even though he is not human anymore.
Wow. Yeah, that is something that even though the book is only about like 63 pages or so, it's very thin, short story. It's very powerful. And I found myself several times having to kind of put it down and, like you said, kind of think about these things. And sometimes it almost like, not to be cliche, but it literally did take my breath away some of these lines and some of the endings to these chapters, I was just like, wow. And on a personal note, my grandmother, she sadly passed away from Alzheimer's. So this whole dilemma that he has in the beginning with dealing with dementia and the pain that he knew that he was going to leave the burden onto others and his who he cared about, especially his wife. I totally felt that. And I could see, I mean, even though I don't think it's the right thing to do, I could definitely see why he did it. So I just wanted to say that it really did hit me, and it really just grabbed me and it did not let go. So like this was some real it just felt so real, and I couldn't applaud you more for that. I thought that was just so awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that was the key. I had to get people to buy into the fact that someone would do this to themselves, right? And so I needed a reason and a reason why, and I thought that would be a good reason why someone would make that choice. Like, you're cut down in the prime of your life. Um, you're missing out on a bunch of time, and you feel guilty and bad about it, right?
Hmm. And would you say that in your opinion, do you think Bud is better off for the experience he had in his afterlife, or what do you think would have happened if he didn't go through with it?
If he didn't go through it, when your mind starts going, it's a hard thing. It's hard on everyone, um, because eventually you get to the point where you don't know where you are, you don't know what you're doing, and people need to take care of you. Um, it's hard to say. It really depends on the wife's perspective of, did she want that? Did she not? And
Yeah.
kind of the way I wrote Bud, I don't think she would have wanted that, to be honest.
Hmm. It's in a way he kind of made a deal with the devil, because I guess that's the whole point of the story, is that he kept all his faculties, but no way to express, no way to connect. It's just, oh, it's like a different kind of horror. It was awesome. Oh, it's kind of rattling me right now just thinking about it. Um,
Nice. That's what
yeah,
I'm going for.
yeah. So, just to kind of talk about taxidermy, do you have any like cool stories relating to that? Have you ever experienced, witness it, or like take place or take part in hunting or anything like that?
I like animals. I don't really like killing things.
Hmm.
Um, and I've just kind of always been that way. And I remember my dad was a fisherman, and I remember he caught some bass, and they were pretty big, and he wanted to show them off. So he went to a taxidermy place, and I was there while he was doing all the stuff, and I'm just walking around in this back room, and it smells kind of bad, and there's all these animals in like half done condition, and then there's like buckets full of nuts and stuff, and I'm pretty sure that's where it came from in the back of my mind. I obviously didn't think about that until you had asked that question. I was like, huh, experience with taxidermy. Oh yeah, this one horrible nightmare where I'm just walking through this little hallway kind of garage type area filled with like glass eyes and like
Oh,
half done fish. And it's, yeah. So I mean that's probably where it came from, I would guess.
it's funny
But yeah,
because
I would never do taxidermy. I don't, it's creepy. Creepy
yeah,
overall.
yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm all for the right to hunt and everything, but I don't think I would do it myself. But I think it's funny that you go from like the most benign level of that, which is fishing, to writing about an actual man getting stuffed and stuff like that. It's just wild. You went pretty extreme there, and it kind of saw that through to the to the end.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's where a lot of horror comes from, right? Is just your daily life and the things that affect you, the things that gave you an emotional response, and you just amp it up, and you say, well, what happens if I do this? I mean, that's where a lot of my stories come from, is from my daily life, and um, the things that I'm seeing, and I just take them to the next level, and see how that plays out.
Yeah, yeah. So on that note, what is it about horror that makes you want to write in that genre? Or why do you think you lean into the horror elements of things? And I think that's primarily your genre, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've never said I'm a horror writer. It just happens to be that the things I write come out horrific. So, and I think one of the reasons for that is, I could write a realistic story about someone getting taxidermied, and I just don't think it would have the impact to get people to think as if I take them out of their comfort zone and put them into somewhere strange, weird, unfamiliar. And it's when we experience that level of discomfort that we start thinking about things at a deeper level. And that's the thing that I like about horror is I can take reality and I can twist it and play with it and get you to actually think about things. And that's the greatest thing about writing is to get people to think, to maybe change, to kind of question life, reality, the current situations we have. That's my goal. I know there's a lot of people out there that just want to entertain and they want to gross people out and they want to do that. And I'm fine with that. I like some of that stuff too. But for me, if I'm going to spend time on something, if I'm going to spend a chunk of my life on it, I want it to make a difference to people in some way. Like they can look at it and go, well, I thought about it. He's totally wrong. I don't care. But at least you thought about it. That's a difference to me. Even if it's just the smallest difference, I'm totally fine with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I'm telling you, as soon as I finished it, I went and I hugged my wife, and I was thinking about how, sometimes we take our time on this earth for granted because what happens to him in his afterlife, which is almost forever, it all goes by really quickly. And
Mhm.
when you look at it on that scale, we should enjoy, the time that we do have on this earth. And on the note you were talking about with horror and how it reveals some things inside of ourselves, it kind of I kind of think about this idea where they say that we fear what we don't know. And so when we were reading horror and when you're writing horror, I'm sure we're learning things about ourselves that we never thought of before. And I think that's what keeps it's the morbid curiosity, right? Um, so that's why I have a big horror collection, I think, as that's why I enjoy reading it. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, the biggest fear is the unknown, right? So, um, as a writer, we like to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and that you did. Um, so you definitely write prolifically. And how much time do you dedicate to reading?
Reading, I mean, I wish I could do more, but I'm so focused on my own things, and I also kind of have a weird thing as far as being creative, where I don't want to be influenced by other things. So I'll read. I usually read stuff that's totally not related to my genre. I'll read like the top end horror stuff, like stuff that everyone's talking about. Like I read Stephen Graham Jones.
Mhm.
Um, I'll read, I read Gabino Iglesias's latest one, and that was really awesome. So like the stuff that's really being talked about, that's really picking up fire, I'll check it out. Other than that, I try and stay away from it because I just don't want to be influenced by it. I don't want to be um, kind of, stealing their style, stealing their ideas. I like to create and try and do unique things myself. And so that's the hard part because there's a lot of horror that I would read, um, but I don't. But I do read, I'll read before bed. If I finish all my writing and I have like a ton of time and I'm not doing anything, I'll pick up a book. Um, so I don't know, maybe I'm probably like a 30 to 40 book a year guy.
It's funny because you say, oh, I don't do that much reading, and then you hit us with 30, 40 books. That's way more than the average.
I don't think I don't, it should be higher. If
Yeah.
you're not doing or creating or doing stuff like that's like that's less than 3 books a month. Come on now,
Yeah.
we can do better than that as a society.
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely with you. I think everyone would do better with they would feel better um about life if they opened a book every once in a while. And it's a really good practice in empathy, I think. I just think about things differently, even if it's fiction, especially when it's fiction. And nonfiction is also great too, to get informed and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
for the thing that I love about it is like it allows me different perspectives, right? Like I can be behind the eyes of an African American woman. Like that's not me. I don't have that experience. I don't have that that walk in life. I don't have that, but I can see it and I can understand it, and it makes me more empathetic to others as well, which I think is totally key. I mean, if more people read and more people read different perspectives and got out of their comfort zone, we would be such a better off country with as far as empathy and understanding goes, and that's something we need more of.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Um, so you mentioned Stephen Graham Jones. Are there any other authors that you particularly like or will follow?
I kind of do a one and done on people. Stephen Graham
Mm.
Jones is like one of the ones where I'm like, I'll read anything he writes because he's amazing, and I kind of connect to it because I'm Native American myself. So it's like I get that perspective, and I like that, and that's something that I never had when I was a kid. I never read a book by anyone that was a Native American author when I was growing up. So that's fascinating to me, like to be able to read books and see my own representation in it. Gabino Iglesias, I love that book so much. I'll read anything he writes. Um, Clive Barker, I'm a huge fan of from back
Yeah,
in the day.
Books of
I
Blood.
love some blood. Like not all his books hit with me, so that's something. But I mean, just on the sheer chance that it could be like We've World or Books of Blood, I'll pick it up and read that. Um, Stephen King, I grew up with him. I think I'm kind of moved beyond him now. Respect what he's done, but I just I don't get the charge out of him anymore. Um, who else? I have a lot of indie writers that I like to read. Uh, let's see, Carlos Rivera is doing a cool thing. He's got this trilogy he's writing called the White Harbor Saga or trilogy, White Harbor trilogy, and he's doing really cool stuff with that. Um, yeah, I mean, I like to sample a little. I only read like 30 or 40 books a year, so I got to sample a little bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally respect how you don't want to be influenced. You keep it, I mean, you're plenty creative. You have so many ideas in your head that yeah, just dipping your toe every once in a while seems to be enough. That's really cool. Um, so when you're writing, what's your ideal writing environment? What does that look like?
Um, it's usually it's kind of a weirdo environment. I've started writing on the floor. Like I'll just like lay down in front of my computer and that's just where I write.
Hmm.
Um, and there's usually music going. If there's something thematically, for instance, if I'm writing one of my zombie novels, I'll put on a zombie movie just to have it
Oh,
in the background, just to hear some groans and stuff like that, just to kind of have it going. I don't really pay attention to it. I'm in my own world.
yeah, yeah. Just
But
atmosphere.
yeah, it's atmosphere, right? But for most things I write, it's there's music going. There's just punk rock music, ska music, just flying around. So that's my environment. Usually I can get my work done without my cat interrupting me. My cat is the antithesis of my perfect writing environment because she'll come in and just kind of there's no denying her when she gets there. So
How old is your cat? Just curious.
oh, she's 13. She's 13. So she is the old lady of the house and she runs everything. So if I'm writing and she's there, there's I have to take care of her needs at that point.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Um, do you have any other artistic inclinations besides writing?
When you say inclinations, can you what do you mean by inclinations? Like things that I
Like,
actually do or things that I want to do?
it could be both. Like, for example, I really like to read and I like to stretch my writing muscles, but I can also, draw a little here and there. I really like comic books, so I'm interested in that kind of art. I went to Norway last year specifically to see The Scream, by Edvard Munch over there.
Hmm.
And so I just wanted to see if you liked any of that. I'm also like a big cinephile. I love film and I study it for no particular reason, just for myself. So I'm not writing papers or anything like that, but I just really pay attention to directors, the production and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to see what were you interested in as well?
Yeah, I'll try anything once, really. I mean, I've made a movie before. I've done screenplays. Um, I made a little short film for a one night stand at the end of the world. I've even done some songs that are awful. I can't play music or instruments or anything, but I've sang on some songs for some of these little projects that I've done. So I like to toy around. Um, it's I can't draw or anything. I can't play instruments. So basically anything related to writing, I'll try, you know, once every now and then. Uh, so yeah, but I'm definitely a novelist. I'm into that. I've done short stories and I didn't care for that process. It was like too much like uh, homework writing assignments from when you're
Oh,
like in college and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, write this thing about an escalator, and that's not that's stifling to my creativity.
hmm I feel that. Um, so you kind of talked a little bit about marketing and making sure you get your ideas out there. Can you kind of like talk about interactions that you've had with fans? Do you get a lot of feedback from your fans? And
I get a fair amount of feedback. Most of it is like, hey, when's the next This Rod World coming out? Because those are the most rabid fans, are like my zombie novel fans. They just love it. They want more of that. But I have groups that have found me and they want to give me feedback and help me out with my writing before it ever hits, the publishing. So I've got lots of those. I have people that, just email me out of the blue and they're like, hey man, I love this. I got a question. And that's always fun. Like it's fascinating to me that something I wrote, people are like, they got questions about it. They want to know about this character. Did I mean to do that, or did it just randomly happen? I get a lot of those, and it's really fun. It keeps me writing for sure. Um, yeah, I love my fans for sure.
yeah, that's really cool. And have you felt in any way that they've kind of impacted your writing at all? Like, have you taken some of their suggestions or pointed out something, like enlightened you to something that you didn't realize before?
I think initially there were some things where when I was starting out writing, and I was just like, I didn't take an MFA course at college. I just started writing. And so there were things in my writing that maybe could have been better, could have been fixed. And I took some of that feedback and I changed it, right? I changed it, I improved it. And now it's just like, are there any plot holes in this thing? Did you see any typos? And that's kind of where it's at. Because I'm pretty confident in my system and my creativity and my ability to craft stories um, with interesting endings. So now it's just like, if they have questions or yeah, I don't know. There's just great feedback. It's all generally positive. I don't know. They're great.
Cool. That's really awesome. That's really awesome that they're following you. You have the Rotten World books that you're on your ninth book, right? Is it the ninth one? How many have you had?
Well, I'm writing the ninth one now, so I just put out the eighth one in January. Um, so that's kind of an interesting ongoing thing. Um, I don't know why I can just write zombie stories forever, but I just can't.
Yeah, and I know that that's probably amongst one of your more popular series. Do they all link together or do they all have like a through line? Are we following the same characters?
There were initially a set of five that I was like, this is my story, this is the end, and I worked through it. It took five novels to work through it. And then, people wanted more. And I was like, I took, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months off from it until I actually got something that was worth saying. So I
Mhm.
don't just write zombie stuff. I mean, I'm still trying to say things even within my zombie novels, right? I'm still trying to kind of show some cool things. I want an idea. I want something I can play with, something that's meaningful to me. Um,
Yeah.
and so then I made a second set with a new batch of characters in a new location, and that's on the fourth one. I think there might be two more of those. Um, maybe three more. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. And I'm just curious, I just thought of this. I know that Stephen King kind of has a loose universe where like characters might be mentioned or pop up in different books that are can seem totally unrelated. Do you have any of that going on in your stories? Because you have so many different types of books.
Yeah, I mean there are some connections. There's one that I've been toying around with. I don't know that I'll ever get to it because it involves like the initial set of the four like single stories I wrote, and each one would kind of be a trilogy that kind of connected. Well, what was the cause of this rotten world? Why did these zombies come about? Like I know what that is. The problem is it would take I don't know four more books in these other series that were just not very popular to make it happen, and so it may just exist only in my head.
Oh, okay. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
We'll see. I kind of wanted to ask too, did you have any say or um, feedback when it came to creating this cover art?
I did not. No, I don't. I don't know how it happened or what happened. I do know they chose my favorite cover artist, who is the one that I personally choose. It just kind of worked out that way. Don Noble. He works. He's part of Rooster Republic Press, and He's done my last 17 novels that I've published. And
Wow.
when I got that one, they just randomly chose him, and I was like, no way, that's crazy. So
That's so cool because it's a really, really strong cover.
yeah,
It's
it's awesome.
badass.
Don rocks. Yeah, he's great.
That's so cool. Um, and then I think I just have a couple more questions for you, JC. I forget what I was saying. Oh, let me just restart. Do you have any difficulty ending a book or novella or story? Not so much as in like finding the ending, but kind of like letting it go. You spend so much time with it. Do you have any kind of like separation anxiety when it comes to that, or are you eager to start the new book?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where I'm usually writing. I'm literally writing two novels now, and I have them in all these different states. Like I have one that just needs edits, and I'm ready to shop it. I have one that I just really need a cover for, and I can release it. I have all sorts of projects going on at one time. So when I'm done with one, I literally just forget about it and move on to the next thing, and then I'll get back to it when I'm ready to revise and edit it. So I'm always like, there's no, I don't know. Once I type the end on it, I'm done with it. It's gone. It's like literally out of my head, and it's just something that I tinker with to make it better. But for me, the joy and the challenge of it is just writing it and getting
Yeah.
to the end. Because when I plan a story, the only planning I do is like it's all in my head. I think of the beginning, what's going to be a cool scene at the beginning, how am I going to end it, what's the end, and everything in between is just kind of made up. So I always know the ending, and then when I'm done, I'm like, awesome, I nailed it. I got that ending. Usually, actually, I don't have any endings I'm happy with. So
Wow. Well, that's very cool. And I really want to thank you for being on this or I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us here on Ricky's Rockin' Reviews. And I wanted to just give you the floor to let everyone know where they can find you and what's an upcoming project or something that they should know about.
let's see. I suppose I give the best updates on Facebook. You can just search for Jacy Morris, author. Um, as far as projects go, I have a bunch in the works. Um, like I said, I'm currently writing two for my One Night Stand series, which is not a romance novel. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic weirdo, its own thing. And I'm writing another This Rotten World. Um, and then I have three books that are basically done. I just need to. I'm going to try and sell one. I'm going to publish one in September, and the other one might be going to a publisher. Um, so we'll see how that goes. I'm also working with Third Estate Books, which we're starting a press with some writer friends I know, and they're doing kind of some avant-garde kind of like meaningful horror. Their first thing coming out is called Spectrum, which is an anthology of neurodivergent horror from authors. with autism or other neurodivergent. Um, I'm losing my words now. Neurodivergent divergencies. How's that?
Okay, that's very
So
cool.
there's that. That's going to be cool. And I also do writing coaching, like you had mentioned how you want to kind of start doing the writing yourself.
Hmm.
So if there's anyone out there that wants to use some of my expertise and my, decade of experience as far as being a novelist, feel free to reach out to me. I have a website, jacymorris.com. My writing coaching website is wordstitchwritingcoach.com. And I'm all over the place. I'm totally happy to work with people. I love working with writers. I got a couple I'm working with now that are doing really cool things. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know we can learn so much. Like I said again, thank you everyone watching. I'm going to have a link in the description for his website where you can get the Taxidermied Man, as well as my review that I did on my channel and his Instagram page and anywhere else you can follow him as well. So thank you guys for watching. And JC, anytime that you need to promote something or anything like that, I'm your guy.
I'm gonna
So
take you up on it, dude. I love your reviews. I love your style. You're doing great. So thanks for having me.
thank you, JC. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.